Hey everyone, welcome back to Tailwind Talks. We are here for episode 5. My name is Brandon Smith, and hopefully you had a chance to watch episode 4. Live from Ohio, we had Devin and Colleen, and then David and Natalie. If you haven't had a chance, please go watch that. It was a great episode. And this morning, we're excited to bring you Jon Fahning. Super Bowl of energy. Today is going to be intense. It's going to be fun. It's going to be wild. And that's just my warning to everyone. So, Jon, welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here and excited for the opportunity.
Podcast number 2 or 3. He can't remember, which means it's probably more than 2.
Well, we'll see.
Okay. Well, Jon, you've been with Tailwind just over a year now. And so Jon serves as our director of development and commercial real estate, so touches a lot of different things. Just tell the listeners, what does that mean? What do you work on? What's your team like? Who's on your team? What do you guys focus on?
Yeah. I'm fortunate. The commercial property team really makes up of a good group of people. Got Kelly Mayo that really kind of heads up the commercial property side, alongside with Molly and Jen and Abigail that really oversee the workplace on 3. In addition to having Tyler, Stevie on the construction side that plays both a role on the student side and then also helping on the commercial side as well. So great group, a lot of experience, and collectively, I think we've got an opportunity to really do a lot of good things.
So I know your story pretty well, but every time we talk, I learn something new that blows me away. So I really want to, focus and let the audience know, how did you get here? Because you have a really extensive history in commercial real estate and the development world. So this could be a 3-hour episode, but I think they want us to keep it a little shorter than that. So you went to Iowa State, landscape architecture degree, and somehow that moved into the world of golf course development and design. So tell us about that. It's super interesting to me, and tell some fun stories. How'd you get into that? Where did it lead you? What fun things did you do in that world?
Yeah, absolutely. So graduated from Iowa State. Out of college, had the opportunity to move to Arizona.
What year?
1992.
Okay.
So do the math. Try to figure out how old I am. But yeah, had the opportunity, got hired out of college, worked for a large design firm in Phoenix. And we were doing a lot of work in the commercial side, but I was involved in the landscape architecture and planning group, which led to us getting involved with some of the larger land developers out in Arizona, which when I say larger land developers, these were the guys that were doing 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 acre projects. And so I really got involved with that, which a lot of them at that time were involved with golf course design and golf course management and construction as a part of those overall projects. That led into doing some consulting work and work with some other groups, specifically in the golf side, which led to working for a golf course development company where we were doing 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 acre projects. Focused in the West Coast, so Arizona, California, Utah, Northern California, and Hawaii. So, which also led then me doing work and some consulting work with groups internationally in China and the Middle East. So it was a super fun industry. Got into it at a time when golf was really exploding, but also on the tail end of it is you watch golf really slow down, which really got me involved in some other components of the golf course industry.
So you kind of breezed over, but I want to get more detail on this international travel, because these are some of the stories I've heard, how you would, when you would fly, when you would get home, how long you'd be home, give your wife a high five and do it again. What did that travel overseas look like for you, and how often were you doing that?
Yeah, it was an interesting time because it was 2007, 2008 when the Great Recession hit. Things really slowed down in key markets that we were working in. But I had left the development company and was consulting with them, which then opened up opportunities for me to do development work and consulting work with other groups. One of those groups was doing work in the Middle East and focused in the Middle East in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar, Bahrain. And so I would go over there about once a month, once every 6 weeks. I would leave on a Friday night out of Phoenix, jump on a plane, take the red eye, connect through somewhere, land in either Bahrain, Qatar, or Abu Dhabi where I was working, get off the plane about 6 a.m., go to the hotel, shower, work all day Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday, all day Tuesday, take a red eye back on Tuesday night, be back in Phoenix by Wednesday afternoon. And so it was one of those, you did what you had to do. And then the times I wasn't traveling, I was doing a lot of conference calls and video calls, which because of the time change would occur at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So, but it was a really fun place to work, and it was a fun industry to be in at that time because those markets were exploding.
That is all really crazy. I can't imagine. I feel like I have a travel schedule that's kind of crazy, but that is a whole nother level.
It was
Really cool.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, but it was one of those things. I had a lot of friends and a lot of colleagues that were really struggling because of the development had shut down, and I was fortunate to move over prior to that happening and just watch that market continue to grow.
Yeah. So you left that development company. You were doing some consulting. When did the transition into really the commercial real estate development world, and when did that become more of the focus? What was the next stage in your career after, leaving more of the specified golf, industry stuff into the commercial real estate? Like, what was next for Jon after that 07, 08, and then, beyond?
Yeah, it really happened 2010. My contracts were up on the international side, and my wife and I looked at each other and said, hey, do we really want to continue to live in Arizona? Do we want to raise our kids there? And we had an opportunity to move back to the Midwest, where I grew up in Iowa. My wife was from Arizona, so that was a little bit of a hurdle to get her to move. But, at that point, had an opportunity to go to work for a development company or for a general contracting company to start up a development group. And so that was really kind of my first 100% focus on commercial. On our projects we were doing before in Arizona and the West Coast, those were really mixed-use projects, although they were centered around golf. And so that really gave me the ability to really jump in and focus 100% on commercial and on the development side.
Okay. So how long were you this general contractor starting a development company? What did that look like? How long did you do that? What things did that lead you to do, work on? What new experiences did you have with that?
Yeah, that was really, it was about a 5-year stint. It really took us about a little over a year really to kind of get things started. And we were a preferred developer for a couple different groups. One was a daycare group, one was a pharmacy group, in addition to doing some odds and end things and some consulting work with some of our developers we were building for. And so that really led in an opportunity to grow. And then at the time, and this was about 2016, the owner of the construction company decided to retire. And at that point, we kind of said, all right, what are we going to do with the development side long term? And that really led into an opportunity for me to go to work for a regional bank in the upper Midwest to really come in and work with them to reposition their real estate. They had a little over 100 branches and really wanted to downsize, but also create some efficiencies. And so that really kind of took the experience on the commercial development side and understanding of that to really take a look and say, what were those opportunities? How do we make that efficient? But how do we take advantage of, an asset that sometimes companies look at more as a liability? And so really gave us the ability to focus and reposition that real estate. And I spent the next 5 years doing that, and then really got to a point we kind of had an opportunity to really see that, okay, we'd gotten to the point where we needed to be in a period of time. So now let's kind of scale that back. And during that time, that's when I had an opportunity. I got initially introduced to Tailwind through Kyle Smith.
Sure. So back to, redeveloping these banks, maybe downsizing. Did that mean closing the banks, or are they looking for, hey, we've got a 15,000 square foot facility, and now with online banking and drive-throughs, and was it downsizing the size and then redeveloping the rest of the, lot and acreage on that site, or was it just completely repositioning all the real estate?
It was a combination. I mean, I think it was the realization they had more space in some markets that they needed. They had some outlying areas where just through bank acquisitions and growth over the years, they had added banks, and now as markets grew, they realized that, hey, we don't necessarily need some of the banks in the outlying areas. So it gave them the ability to consolidate. So in some cases, you were taking 2 banks and developing one new bank to replace the 2 that were better sized and more efficient in the design and the operational side. So it was really a combination of all of it.
Sure. Okay. You talked about meeting Kyle, so that's what we're going to get into next. But you also talked about your family a little bit. So we always do a little bit personal. So wife, 4 kids, I believe.
4 kids.
Tell us what we need to know about the family and how did they deal with this crazy travel schedule and your crazy energy in your life and all those type of things.
Yeah, I met my wife actually when I moved out to Arizona about a year after. We dated for about 3 years, got married, and started building our family. We have 4 kids. I have an older son, 2 sons that have gone through the Naval Academy. One is actually at the Naval Academy. So we've been very fortunate with that, and they're really starting to create their paths. In addition to having 2 girls still at home, one was a senior in high school and starting the college hunt. So it's kind of exciting talking with her and seeing some of the things that we do as a company and some of the colleges they get introduced and talking with her about that. And then I have a younger daughter that's a freshman in high school. So it was a little bit of a transition, especially for my wife moving, but our kids really embraced it and have enjoyed it since we moved.
Awesome. That's cool. And you're chasing a lot of volleyball games. That's most every time you say I'm working remote, I'm out of office, it's chasing a volleyball game.
Absolutely. Yeah. Both my daughters play volleyball. So it's been a lot of fun, and we love the travel side of sports. We did it with our older 2, and it's fun now to do it with the girls because it's a different perspective.
Cool. All right. Now we can jump back. So your work with Bremer, kind of doing some commercial redevelopment, repositioning, is what led you to become familiar with Tailwind. And I guess our story is unique in that you kind of worked with Tailwind unofficially for several years before we hired you and you came on board full time. So what was that initial introduction to Kyle? How did that lead to work together kind of as a consultant or, unofficially? And then we'll kind of lead up to about a year ago when you officially came on board.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kyle and I both were kind of running parallel when Caribou Coffee was first starting their cabin concept, which is their 625 square foot drive-through only. Kyle was working on a project in St. Peter, and I was working on a project in Big Lake. And ironically is the property that ultimately developed in St. Peter for the Caribou, I had previously had under contract for another retailer. And then when that terminated and that retailer didn't move forward with the site, Kyle and I got connected, and we found out we were both working on the Caribous together. And we said, hey, Kyle asked me, he's like, well, why don't you just help me with this one?
So
you understand?
Were you working together or competing?
Well, not really competing, because at that point, Caribou was just developing that concept. And so they were looking at new markets, but they had this idea they wanted to have kind of preferred developer. So a small group of people developing on their behalf, but really working in conjunction and comparing notes because it was a new concept.
Sure.
And so we were both working on those projects, really comparing notes together, but also collectively with meetings with Caribou. And at that point, we both finished them up. The gentleman I did the Big Lake project with decided he didn't really want to move forward with them. It wasn't his forte. And Kyle had some other projects that were coming up with Caribou, and he said, why don't you just come help me? And so at that point, that's where we kind of jumped on board and, took it from just doing those first couple to doing, and ultimately having the portfolio just about 30. So over about a 3-year period. And during those times, I would travel with Kyle, we'd look at sites, meet other people within the Tailwind Group, have different conversations about, Jon, what's your experience? And, all of a sudden it was like, hey, we got this project. Could you take a look at it? Hey, Jon, what's your thought about this project? And then it finally came to the point, it's like, Jon, why don't you just come work for us?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I remember that conversation, and that was a very exciting time for me because, as you know, our development team prior to was the combination of Kyle and myself and one other person. So bringing in someone like you with all this years of expertise was a real exciting time for me, to be able to lean on you for things like that, learn a lot from you. So that's great. I think we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to talk about Tailwind today and your team and, what we're working on and things like that. But I think they have a really interesting thing that we have to do here. So
this will be interesting.
The game is called Speak Out. You have to put this whatever in your mouth. Well, I'll do it first, and then I have to read 3 phrases off this card, and you have to try to guess what I'm saying. Yeah, but this is going to be great. So hopefully I can get this in. I struggled earlier.
It's like being at the orthodontist.
I'm never in. Is this right? Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, gosh. I hurt her. blueberry muffins. Her record.
I eat blueberry muffins.
Close. I hurt you. Her record.
I purchased something muffins.
Ear.
Blueberry muffins. I purchased blueberry muffins
Her record.
for
Okay.
breakfast.
Let's do it. That was bad.
That was awesome.
Okay. You got it. Ready for the next one? Is this for horse highlight because the printer hit her ran out?
Okay, one more set. Slower.
Is this reports piled up because the printer hit her ran out?
Something about the printer paper ran out.
Good. Business reports piled up.
The business hurts.
Business
Business
reports
piled up
because
because the printer ran out of paper. Yes.
let's go. Let's go. Our lips are getting dry. I'm gonna go half. You just gotta eat one take. Okay?
Sake.
Her hustling her procrastinators final projects and her tennis serves that big planning.
Professional procrastinators put something off.
Pile up projects and pretend it's productive planning.
Pile up projects and something productivity.
Pretend
Pretend.
productive planning.
Productive planning. Pretend it's productive planning.
Oh.
Oh. All right. Looks like it's my turn.
I'm glad to be on this side of it now.
Yeah.
Okay. You know like this. I feel like he's got this down. All right. You ready? So I think you got to go fast, one take, and then like I can take one guess, but then we can work through it. I think I probably see you the first time. Okay. You ready? I'm just, yep.
Oh my gosh. Bring great dreams to the break room. Hot luck like these. Oh, like you. Oh, prepare for that class. What?
I did learn.
All I heard was baked beans. That's right.
I'm going to say eating baked beans in the break room caused. Try me again. I'm trying to go more. Bringing
Baked beans to the break room. Hot luck like the old. Prepare for that class.
bringing baked beans to the potluck break room. Bringing baked beans to the break room potluck might be cold, old,
Bold.
bold, okay, bold, but
Prepare
prepare
for
backlash.
their diets.
Yeah, stop drilling again.
Should have got him a bib.
Listen, better.
Okay, next one. Let's do this one. Brandon's busy looking conferences for the productive project planning sessions.
Brandon's busy booking conferences for productive planning sessions.
Conference links.
Oh, come on. That was good.
That was good.
That was perfect.
That was one time.
One take.
Kicking my tail.
Well, no, that means you're doing good.
Oh, okay. All right. Please prepare the presentation and print plenty of packets for the board meeting.
Please prepare the presentation and print plenty of packets for the board meeting.
You
can hear getting for all over this thing.
We're out of hard. There we go.
We got time for one more.
Old branding proposals require a little planning and precise paper alert.
Boy, that one was not as clear to me. Bold planning proposals require precise planning and paperwork.
Close. Bold branding.
Bold branding.
Proposals require both planning and precise paperwork.
Bold branding proposals require
Both planning and precise
both planning and precise proposals.
paperwork.
Hey,
We should have just been done.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to know after this one.
good wordplay. Our dignity may be hurt,
No,
but if we make at least one person laugh, it'll be worth it.
absolutely.
Thank you for doing that.
No, that was awesome.
Well, we at the break we talked about joining Tailwind officially. So we had you'd been working with us a little bit more and more unofficially, and eventually those things come to, well, why not make it official? So, we're super blessed and excited that you've been on board here for probably closer to 18 months now than a year. For the listeners, you mentioned it earlier, but Tailwind is obviously primarily known for our student housing, real estate, and management company and all those types of things. So probably the unsung hero and, more behind the scenes is the commercial real estate portfolio, which we brought you in with your team to oversee and help grow and diversify. So what does your day-to-day look like, now? And I know, of course, every day is different.
Right.
But for the listeners that maybe aren't familiar with Tailwind as a commercial, real estate developer, manager, what are you and your team focusing on? What are the things that you're looking for? What does the management look like? What opportunities are you looking for? Just kind of give us peel back the curtain, the world into our commercial real estate portfolio, and then the development world at the same time that can, cross both student and commercial.
Absolutely. It was fortunate kind of coming into Tailwind is, we had about 700,000 square feet of kind of commercial portfolio. And that had been kind of pieced together over the years and some different, it includes office, a lot of retail. The nice part is there was a team in place. Between Kelly and Molly, Matt was kind of helping out. So they were really kind of running the day-to-day side of that and the operational side. And that still continues today. And so, really, part of my day is really working with them as we continue to figure out other alternative solutions of the property. As we get tenants that exit, all right, let's work together and brainstorm to figure out, okay, who can we get to replace that space? What other opportunities are out there? But also starting to look at other parts of the portfolio of, okay, now we have some vacant land holdings, in and around the Mankato area. Down in Iowa City, we have 73 acres. And so now part of the day is really looking at, okay, how do we start to solve for that? When we start to look at Iowa City, that was an acquisition that we did last year. And really now working through of, okay, how do we get that approval process done through the city and through the governmental agencies from a master planning standpoint? So it's now working with our consulting group on that. It's working with our internal teams of managing through the financial modeling of that. Then working with the external partners on identifying, from the broker standpoint, identifying users that fit that master plan. So we're planning for something that we can build right away. And so, that's one example. Now we have a couple projects down in Florida that we're now working through managing the design teams, working with our internal teams on, both accounting, the finance side of, okay, how do we get these projects to pencil on what we're planning? And so that really becomes kind of the day-to-day. And which I love because each day is never the same. There's always challenges with each day. And, the role that really on the commercial real estate side and kind of what we do is it's like student, it's problem solving. It's how do you keep those projects moving forward? How do you solve for the challenges that are being created?
Yeah. That Iowa City project in particular, it seems much more, wide, longer process, more drawn out, and a lot more parties involved. So, student, you've been doing it for a long time. We identify an opportunity, we do our due diligence, we set a closing date, and 90 to 120 days, you own and manage that property. This Gateway District project in Iowa City we've owned it for a year, and we're probably a year away from even having, shovels in the ground. And so How do you see like that master planning process? I mean, what's important, as you're thinking about the vision for the site and bringing in all these external parties, and, you can sell off parcels, you can develop, you can keep it all, you can, it's just a lot of people, that's probably a foreign concept of buy 73 acres of a piece of dirt and you've got apartments and gas stations and Costco, Walmart, whatever is going to go there. How do you put all those pieces together, and how do you be successful in doing that?
I think the big thing is really looking at is what's the vision of the project? Where does it sit? What's the context of it? Gateway District is an interesting one because it sits on the major entry point into Iowa City and kind of that downtown and the college area, but at the same side as it sits along a freeway. And so now it's trying to balance of, okay, what's the vision of the city? What's the market requiring? What's the market want in that area? And what's going to service it and really make the project successful? And when you start to look at the master planning side, it's starting to look as how does each parcel play and support the other? This one's an interesting one because it is going to have, and it's adjacent to a residential area. How do you design it so it transitions from a residential component to a very high commercial, basically almost a freeway type situation? And so a lot of that really becomes working with creating parcels and sizes that are going to be sellable. And the first thing that we did was really go out and have a market study done. Is what does the market bear? What will the market bear? What will support a project to deliver that and build it as quickly as possible? Because that's really the critical component when you look at projects of that scale. It's not like it's 2 acres or it's on the student side where, hey, if you're doing a ground up, it's, you're looking at is how do you time that with the student and the college and the move in and move out? With this, it's really how do you time everything together to get it built as quickly as you can, because, the longer you sit on it, the longer and the more it costs you as a developer.
Sure. Yeah, it's super interesting. Say we get, the project fully planned out, entitled, and are ready to go. What's your team's role on the construction side of things? Tailwind as a, managing a general contractor or construction manager. I know you have, you're helping oversee that as well, with another team member. So, you kind of just talk through the whole development, entitlement, pre-construction, pre-planning phase. When we have a viable project and we go, what does that look like for you and your team on the ongoing management, making sure we stay on budget, stay on schedule, actually deliver the product that we, designed and planned?
Yeah. I mean, this one, and this scale of project is really critical is what are those external general contractors, and the subcontractor components, is having those key relationships with them to work with Tyler on the construction side, work with our team, to help because now we're delivering pad sites to ultimate tenants or in some cases, other developers like on the multifamily side, because it's not student, in that case, there potentially is another developer that comes in where now we have a responsibility to deliver a certain characteristic of that site to that developer. And so it's going to be really critical for us to really work hand in hand with the general contractor, with the city, with the subcontractors to make sure that, to your point, because there's also criteria delivered to what's the timing of that parcel, because if we're selling it to somebody, we have to make sure we're delivering it on time for them to develop their project as well, and the timing related to what they want. And so it's really going to be critical that the team works together, but really coordinating and manage through with those external partners in addition to the city.
Yeah. Yeah. So on the construction side, the last several years have been a lot more challenging for development. I'd say, obviously, your start was COVID with all of the supply chain issues with, ships being stuck at ports and, materials not being available or plants completely shut down. And you kind of rolled right in that. So you've got lack of supply of materials and things like that. And then as that started to get cleaned up, then you had big spikes in interest rates and inflation and things like that. So where do you see the construction world right now as far as viability of doing new projects? What's investor sentiment on development? Do you see any relief in cost and things like that? Just, I know you can't predict the future, but what's your overall feel on development and construction? 6-7 years ago was kind of the heyday. Money was really cheap and everyone was building everything. And, that's obviously drastically changed. So what do you see it as now and into the future?
I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, because I think there's, we all got spoiled on able to build stuff, cheaper interest rates, but the tenant side as well, especially in the commercial side and some of these national retailers, I think you were able to be pretty competitive as related to, new projects in relation to existing projects and kind of that second generation, and retailers looking at both and being in some growth areas. Now what's happening is because development has slowed down, particularly in the Midwest. When you look at the statistics, Midwest has the lowest occupancy of retail in the entire U.S. It's in the top 5. And so now what's happening is you're getting national retailers that are wanting to grow, but they can't because there's no vacancy available, but the cost of construction is up, which in turn increases their rent and what they're able to pay. And so I think that's what's creating a little bit of a lull right now is that balance. But at some point, those retailers are going to want to continue to grow, or if they're publicly held, they have to grow. And so I think it's really coming to find out is where are there solutions that developers and retailers can work together to find that. But it's going to come at some point. It's just a matter of when. If I was to crystal ball it, I'm going to say probably within the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to start to see the opportunity to develop increase, which I think is going to be good timing for a couple of our projects. Because I think it's going to be the point is the retailers are going to want to grow. And, unfortunately, it's going to come to a point is, rents are going to go up.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me about, how do you think about repositioning of existing real estate? I know that's something you did in a prior career with a bank. Obviously we know what the statistics are on office right now. Vacancies at an all-time high. You're seeing office buildings in the country that sold for $200 million 10 years ago sell for $15 million today, right? They're empty. So do you see any opportunity what's your vision for these bigger metros in the cities with these 50-story, office buildings? Do you see redevelopment opportunity in that, or do you see office coming back?
I think you're going to see office coming back. I think, obviously COVID made a change. It gave people the opportunity in business to learn of how they can do business differently. But I think there's a lot of culture that was lost on people in an office environment that all of a sudden now are working from home. And now it's the idea of companies are realizing that maybe productivity isn't as great as we thought it was, now getting people back to the office. Are they going to need the square footage that they needed before? Probably not. So now it's a matter of how do you take that and create something different out of it? Now, office developers are saying, okay, now I got to create more amenities to get people to come back to the office. It's interesting to see some of those where now they're taking the office space that was done before. Now they're creating, study areas or quiet areas or, places where they can entertain and, larger fitness centers, because that's what the attraction is. But on some of those ones that are just challenged in markets where there's a ton of inventory, obviously you're hearing a lot of cities that are saying, how do we convert those to residential, And I think for me is that's going to be a challenging approach because the cost to do that, because these buildings were not designed for residential. Now you've got all that infrastructure, water, sewer, a lot of those things that are just undersized. To try to do that, it's going to be a matter of how does that pencil for developers? But more so are there city governments that want to see that? What are those incentives that are going to come forward for those developers?
Yeah, I think you're going to see some tax credit to office to multifamily conversion. I think you're definitely going to see that. Well, what do you think about student housing? So about a year and a half, couple of years exposure to that on the development side, on the construction side. What have you learned about student housing? What's your outlook for that into the future?
It's interesting because, you always heard of student housing and for me coming in, but really understanding what's the difference between student housing and apartments. And, and obviously it's the lease by the bed versus lease by the unit. And for me, as seeing that, you start to understand of, okay, now as you see the colleges grow and the opportunities grow, and, and again, having college age kids, obviously my first two had a different experience, because they didn't live really off campus. But now with my daughter coming in and having friends where their kids are looking at student housing, it's a different view of, how kids live today versus how we lived going to college. And I think that's where I get really excited just to see that from a different perspective. But now also looking at it is what's going to continue to attract those kids every single year to those facilities. And, what are some of those amenities that are really important to kids and college kids and, young adults in some case, when you start to look at colleges that have a big graduate program. That's super exciting to see that just from a different perspective. And for me, it's great because now you're seeing, okay, what opportunities are there where you think a college is really successful, but yet you see a declining enrollment versus other ones and in certain markets. And what's that attraction?
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people in the industry that say, they've worked in it. And then when their first kid hits college and does their first apartment search, now your perspective totally changes because now it's really real. Now it's personal. It's not just the work. So
Absolutely.
Well, looking forward, what are you most excited for the next 12 months, 24 months at Tailwind, in the development, commercial industry as a whole? Just give us something that you're excited about, looking forward to.
I mean, I think it's two things. I think it's where the business is going, both in the student and the commercial side. I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity when we comes for Tailwind to really continue to get that exposure in the commercial side and taking what we learned on the student side with that value add approach, but also seeing from a development standpoint is because, again, that's a little bit more market dictated where, finding opportunities where it's those shopping centers or those, strip centers that are 15, 20, 25 years old, original developers ready to get out, where now we can take that model of a value add like we've done in student and take that to the commercial side. So I think that's really kind of a key side on the commercial. I think the student continuing doing what we're doing, for me is getting more exposed of, what are those value add opportunities, not only from improving an existing structure on the student, but saying, hey, how can we take some of that vacant area and add additional beds to it and view it from a different perspective. But the other side of it is just the Tailwind side. I mean, this is, it's an incredible organization. And I think for me, being outside in, working for a lot of large developers, a lot of large corporations. I mean, I worked for, spent a year with the 5th largest bank in the world, and coming to Tailwind and realizing what a family it is and just the personal side to it. That's just the most exciting thing for me is it keeps you coming back to the office every single day.
Well, that was going to be my last question, so you already answered it, but great segue. I was just going to ask, in your time at Tailwind, what have you learned? What have you come to appreciate? How is it different, than other places you've worked? But you already answered it. But anything else you want to add about, the people at Tailwind, the philosophy, how we look at real estate, how we think about people, just anything for the listeners that, as a newer employee that's works for, like you said, monster corporations, small regional bank, kind of been everywhere in between.
I mean, again, I think it's, Tailwind, it's the leadership and the people. That's what makes it. I mean, it makes it fun every single day. And I think the energy, when you work for a company that's grown somewhat organically, but there's a method to the madness of why we do what we do, but just people's excitement to come every single day. And, I mean, again, I'm seasoned in a sense in the industry, not old, I'm seasoned.
Yeah.
But, working for a lot of, people and young professionals that are really, this is kind of their first step in the professional world, and having that energy every single day and saying, all right, let's keep up, let's compete for that energy.
Yeah.
That's the fun part.
Well, Jon, no one really competes with you. You scare people. Like when you walk into the office, it could be 6 a.m. and Jon's there, and you're getting greeted with a Brandon, what's up? And it's a jolt of life, and we really appreciate the energy that you bring. So
It's fun. I mean, it's for me, it's the appreciation of every single day, and realizing what you have in your career and what's been done, and just say, hey, let's give other people that opportunity. And, because it's the smile on the face makes everybody's day every single day.
And we don't have to talk about it, but that made me think, I mean, does some of that appreciation come from an experience you had that almost you didn't make it?
I did. I was in a car accident when I was a sophomore in high school and severed 95% of my jugular vein in the car accident. And if just one simple change in how they treated that accident, I wouldn't be here today. And I think for me, it's that realization and that appreciation of, things can change in a heartbeat. So, live every day, have fun, and make the best of it because, you may not have it tomorrow. And it's an unfortunate side that sometimes we have to look at, but I think that's the motivation every single day.
That's so powerful. So cool. Well, Jon, thanks for being on. You did an awesome job. I think everyone's going to love hearing your story. We're going to swing it over to David. He's going to meet with accountant extraordinaire, Zach Kaufenberg. They're going to talk about hopefully not too much accounting because I was going to say it's going to be super fun, but I'm sure they'll have a good time. So swing it over to David. Thanks again, Jon.
All right. Thank you.
Brandon, Jon, thank you for that kind introduction. My name is David Hughes, Director of IT here at the Tailwind Group. I'm here with Zach Kaufenberg, one of our senior property accountants at Tailwind. And Zach, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Say, we want to start right off with a little bit more about you. What did you do before working at Tailwind?
So I started with Tailwind in fall of 2020, but prior to that, I started off being an intern here in Mankato at a manufacturing company for 3.5 years during college. While also in college, I did work at a bank for 5 years, so kind of had that experience of financial and accounting before joining Tailwind. And that transitioned to another internship when I was in grad school, doing taxes and auditing for local farmers and co-ops in Southwest Minnesota. Went through that, figured that industry wasn't for me, specifically working in agriculture. So having that experience in manufacturing, I ended up working at a CPA firm here in Mankato and specifically focused on audits for manufacturing clients. So did that 2.5 years. And at the time, my manager had left that company to come work at Tailwind. And just through how business works out, ended up working on an audit for Tailwind at the time. Liked the work I did, and he said, if you ever look or wanting to look for a career change, I might have a spot for you. So one thing led to another, and 4 years later, here I am still. So that's kind of how I got into Tailwind.
Yeah, very cool. So tell us what a day in the life of a Tailwind accountant is like. What's your role and responsibilities?
Yeah, so I kind of think about it in two different aspects. One being we have our month-end period, which is typically the first 2 weeks of each month. And then the back half of the month is kind of the downtime, meaning the first, say, 5-10 days, it's our month-end close. So we're working on getting our invoices into the system, the approvals pushed through, reconciling our cash, doing our financials for our operations and finance teams to review and approve. And then once that's all signed down, back half of the month, we do more project-based work, some internal audits, and just pay vendors, stuff like that. So
Sure. So a couple weeks ago, I had the great pleasure of sitting down with Natalie, our legal counsel. I asked her a question of stereotypes, legal stereotypes. So I'll ask you the same question. What stereotypes for accountants are you familiar with? Which ones are a little bit true? Which ones are not so true?
yeah, so I think in general, in our industry, there's kind of 3 core ones that stick out to me. One is that we're very introverted people. We don't like talking to people, we just want to do our work in and out of the office, right? 2, being very tight to the rules, being sticklers. It has to be this way, it can't be that way. There's definitely some leeway either way, but at the end of the day, just make sure everything's right. We're reporting stuff accurately, because obviously the financials, other information that we send out is going to different teams. It could be our operations department, it could be our finance teams, and even externally to our investors and our lenders. They rely on that data. So keeping it clean is always important, but not black and white. It has to be this way, it has to be that way. There is some leeway in general.
Sure.
Another one that I get a lot outside of work is that all accountants know how to do taxes. It's farther than from the truth. A handful do. I personally don't, because when I went to school, I focused more on auditing and financial accounting. Accounting as a whole, there's different buckets. So you have your financial accounting, you have your tax accounting, you have your governmental accounting, stuff like that. But tax is so tricky where every year the rules change due to the policies, with politics. 1 year you could have limits of this, and this. These things qualify, those things don't qualify. And depending on what happens in that world, that always changes. So you might know something 1 year, but the next year could be totally different.
Sure. Do all accountants have tattoos?
No, I'd say I'm probably the exception to the rule on that one.
Sure. Well, I understand you took your first ever plane ride recently, incidentally, to one of our properties. I'm curious how that went. What'd you think?
I liked it. We went to, it was down south, it was the spring. We went down to Oxford, Mississippi, went to Baton Rouge, and then we also went to Fayetteville, Arkansas. I will say it was kind of a culture shock to me because being from the upper Midwest, cool, dry in the winter, and going down south and just warm and humid. That it was nice in that aspect because I didn't have to wear a jacket the entire time and can enjoy being outside in late February, early March, where you can't really say that up here in Minnesota. But
Yeah.
it was definitely fun to just see it as a different environment. It seems like a different world. Because just being from the Midwest, you're just so used to how things are, and then down there it's just completely different. So
Yeah. They drive different down there.
oh yeah,
Mississippi, Florida, those drivers.
I will say Florida drivers are the worst.
There's something about when I travel, even with going to Florida with my wife, for example, and not necessarily at me, but people are just laying on the horn, and nobody in Minnesota uses their horn. We might as well not have them. Nobody ever uses them, but they use them down there,
Mhm.
and they're
not
funny.
shy.
Yeah, they're not shy about it at all.
Yeah, so I was recently in southern Florida for a family vacation, and being from Minnesota, I'm so used to fast the traffic is on the left, and you progressively work your way to the right, slower traffic coming in and off the interstate. Not down there. It's everyone's on their own rules. You got slow traffic on the left, slow in the middle, slow on the right, and then the people that don't want to wait, they just zigzag through, and they do not wait for you, and they'll honk at you for sure. I've had a couple people do that to me, and even some people bright me at night. So
They certainly will. Is that, I heard you were out of town last week? Is that where you were, or what
Yeah.
was that like?
So last week, I was taking a family trip down to Miami, Florida. The context for that trip was my sister got Taylor Swift tickets.
Okay.
So it was not for me, it was for my family, or for her and my mom. So those two went to that concert, and it was me, my brother, my sister, and my mom. So when they went to that concert, me and my brother went to an NHL game. So we did that. A really good game. The Florida Panthers, Vegas Knights. The last two teams that won the Stanley Cup. So if it wasn't a Minnesota game being at XL Energy Center up here, and I had to go somewhere else to watch a game, that would be the game I'd want to go to. And that game was tooth and nail into overtime, and where Florida won an overtime goal with 10 seconds left.
That's fun.
That was
That's
really
a good game.
fun. We had tickets that were 8 rows off the ice.
Oh, wow.
So had a perfect view, and the game-winning goal was right in front of us. So if you watch like the highlights, you might actually see us in the background.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Say, shifting back to Tailwind a little bit, I understand kind of your role here. What does Tailwind accounting in general do? If you had to put a, overarching, what is the theme? What is the overall goal of that department?
Well, I would say there's this quote I've heard when I was younger, and I think it applies to Tailwind to an extent, where in the business world, accounting is like the moms, where if they didn't have those, everything would fall off the wheels. So just making sure things are being paid, our investors are being paid, and our lenders are being paid, and stuff like that, our vendors, just making sure we have accurate financials to send to our lenders, to our investors, stuff like that. Just keeping everything nice and clean, and just making sure that things keep moving along.
Now, you mentioned a couple of the properties you visited. What properties have you visited at Tailwind, or is there a particular property that you haven't visited that you'd like to?
Yeah, so I'm going to cheat here, and obviously these properties in Mankato, Rent MSU, Quarters Mankato, Collegetown Mankato, been there, done that, so I feel like that's kind of cheating the system here, but I've been to Quarters East briefly. I have been to the Quarters at Laramie when we used to own them handful of years ago. I've been to Live Red while it was still in construction, so it was very interesting to kind of see how that was all coming along together. At that time, they were still pouring down concrete, getting the beams all set together, so it was still the early stages of construction. And then also been to Oxford for both College Town and quarters. Been to Fayetteville for both College Town and quarters. Been down to Baton Rouge. And I want to say there's another one. I'm just drawing a blank off the top of my head, but those are the ones that stick out to me right now.
Sure. It's a good list.
And for one night we haven't seen, I've always wanted to go out east and go see like Bloomington, East Lansing, and Lee Griff. I haven't been to that part of the country, and I think that'd be kind of cool to kind of see those ones. I've seen the ones in the Midwest for the most part. I've been down to the southeast part of the country, seen those ones, but I haven't really had the opportunity to view any of those ones that have been in the portfolio for a while.
Sure.
But, I hear nothing but great things about them.
Yeah. If you had a magic wand or you were in charge of the transactions team for a day, what area of the country would you like to see us purchase property?
One that sticks out to me is at University of Tennessee down in Knoxville. I think volunteer country would be a good spot for Tailwind. It feels like it's in where we're reaching out geographically, going to the southeast, kind of hovering around that Midwest, Ohio Valley type area. And I always get a kick out of the football program because they're always really good, and I always see videos about Rocky Top and I hear the song. Sure. So to be able to get into that atmosphere and see that in person, I think that'd be kind of cool to see. For Tailwind.
Yeah. Well, Zach, thank you so much. I think it's time we bring it back to Brandon and Jon in their studio over there.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, dude.
And back to you, Brandon.
All right. Well, thank you, David, and thank you, Zach. And we're just going to close it out today. Jon, again, thanks for being on. And thank you to all the listeners for supporting Tailwind Talks. And I hope that you're enjoying it, learning some things at our expense today. You're definitely going to be able to laugh. And as always, if you have ideas for future episodes, people you'd like to hear from, topics you'd like to hear covered, just shoot the marketing team an email, marketing@thetailwindgroup.com. And we're excited to continue to bring you guys content, exciting guests, and new topics. So thanks again for your support, and have a great day.